Hi, this is Paul, the Oak Knight, coming up for air after the Christmas holidays to talk to you about Warfighter Private Military Contractor card game by DVG Games, published earlier this year in 2019. In Warfighter, you are the head of a special ops team that is going to fight your way through opposing forces of various quality, depending on the scenario you choose to play, and you fight your way through the bad guys and get your objectives to win the game. Most games that are played are one-off games rather than part of a campaign, although there are some campaign rules in the book, and I have played them. None rise to the level of what Warfighter PMC provides. Warfighter PMC is basically a whole new wrapper around the Warfighter game as you've come to know and love. If you think about the Warfighter as you've known it to be the creamy inside of the cookie, this would be the chocolatey outside of the cookie that adds to your enjoyment of the game, as well as a different perspective. Instead of being as professional soldiers, you are mercs. You are running a merc company. If you've seen the movie 13 Hours, I think you have a pretty good idea of what this is about. So let's go ahead and start and dive into the components, and I'll give you my thoughts as I go. The first thing you do when you start a new campaign with Warfighter PMC is to form your company. Now, your corporation could be formed in a number of ways. You have to set up your company. You give it a name, location, all of that is eye candy pretty much. But over to the right where you see company type, the company type does matter. So if you're planning to play a smaller game, sole proprietor is a perfectly fine way to go. Frankly, that's all I've done is sole proprietors. And I've had absolutely plenty to do, and even started a team game with a friend where we're each controlling some of the guys on the map. We fight our way to our objectives. It works just fine. The next section down is the reputation of your company. It's going to help you if you have a higher reputation in terms of retaining employees at reasonable prices and getting some advantages in as far as mission. Overhead is basically the cost of having your company. So, if you're running that air conditioning, well, guess what? You got to pay for it, as well as licenses that you can buy for your company to allow it. These would be federal licenses to allow you to purchase different types of weaponry. Unlike regular warfighter, you can't just pick any old weapon. Your company is licensed to use certain types of weapons, and you have to stay within that domain unless and until you buy more enhanced licenses. Then you have your employees who are your mercs. These are the guys who are doing the fighting. Various other things about them. The main thing I think is salary. Each one of your guys is going to have a salary, and we're going to talk about that. Company inventory is just extra things you buy that didn't come with a soldier when you paid for him. So the soldiers do have equipment on their cards by and large. They come with that, but for your player soldiers, you can buy extra equipment just like you could in regular Warfighter, and you can do so here as well. The bottom section, competitors. Your company has competitors. We will talk about that. And to the left, you see office details. That's basically the size and capacity of your office with the associated cost of having that office. And then enhancements, things to make the office better. You also have a compound. That's what is in country. Same kind of thing. It has different sizes, different costs, as well as enhancements. And unlike Warfighter, the name of this game is Making Money. Making money. So you can see if you start as a sole proprietor, here's the victory levels, and it's 100% dependent on your bank account at the end of a 6-month tour. 6-month tour. We'll talk about that. But you have these ugly choices built in where, yes, you'd like to be able to be more effective doing what you're doing. However, that usually entails costing money, which means that you've just put yourself farther away from meeting victory conditions. So that investment has to have a money return to be worth doing. That's Warfighter PMC. All right, let's take a closer look. There are 4 types of corporations. The 4 types are sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, and a full-blown C Corp corporation. And as you can see in each, there are slightly different options, including how much starting money you get, how many contracts you draw each month, and your monthly overhead. So basically, the main impact of the size of the corporations is how many teams you need to support in the field for fulfilling contracts during the course of a game month. to reach the higher objectives that are part and parcel of the higher forms of corporation, you need to have more income. To have more income, you need more contracts. To have more contracts, you need to have more mercenaries on mission to fulfill those contracts. So there's really nothing different in the gameplay based on the corporate form besides that. The next choice you make will be the type of office that you are using for your corporation. Let's see what that does for us. So when you're selecting your office type, you can see that it limits the amount of payroll you can have for your soldiers, and it also changes the overhead expense of what you have to come up with each and every month to run your corporation into the next month. And so we see that the lowest level, you have a low rent office over to the left. Its overhead is $2,000 a month and allows up to $50,000 of payroll going to your mercs, as far as payroll for the month. And when you enhance the office, the base cost is $4,000 for the enhancement. Over to the right, you see the medium-size office at $6,000 monthly overhead with allowing up to $100,000 of payroll. And in the middle, the posh office, which is very expensive. That's the second choice you're going to need to make. Your next decision is going to be, what are you going to use for your company compound? How much are you going to invest in that? The company compound is the in-country base for your mercs. The office is back in for wherever you're coming from. So if you're a U.S. company, then that's going to be in the U.S. The compound is going to be where all the bad stuff is happening. But it's also going to have a great effect as far as how much you can support in country, as we'll see in a second. And there are 4 sizes of compound once you have all the expansions, ranging from small to huge. And you can see that it basically is there to limit the number of mercenary soldiers that you can have in country. So the larger your compound, the more soldiers you can have. The more soldiers you can have, the more contracts you can be operating on to try to make more money for your company. So I have found that for the sole proprietorship, I've gone up to large compound even with the sole proprietorship, and it works just fine. Other than that, you can choose based on your strategy. There's probably different ways to play this game. I have not explored them all, but certainly there would be different ways you could play it. Some would drive you towards a small compound, say if you had higher quality soldiers, or if you went with a bunch of guys who were fresh off the farm, well, then you're going to have more soldiers and you would need a larger compound to house them. After you have selected your compound and your office, there are some enhancements that you can pick for the compound and the office that will also increase or decrease your capabilities. Let's take a look. What you're seeing is one example of an enhancement that is related to the office. So, for example, you can pick to have no lobbyists. Lobbyist is one of the things you can use to change how effective your office is. No lobbyist, doesn't cost anything, no adjustments. This would be the default, especially in the first month of play when you are trying to really manage your expenses. Second, you see for a regular lobbyist is 1 times the enhancement cost of the office. Remember, there was a dollar figure for enhancements on the office card, so your office overhead would increase by 1 times that number should you pick the lobbyist. For that, you get to draw 1 extra contract card each month. You'll see how that works in a minute, but basically the more contract cards you have, the more chances you have to get contracts and the more teams you can keep in the field. And the more teams you keep in the field, the more revenue you should get. And generally speaking, a higher form of corporation is going to want to have more teams in the field. So it's just a generally bigger, but not that much different game. Lastly, here's a connected lobbyist. Okay, draw 2 extra contract cards for the month. And there are other cards such as the lawyers and, I forget what, but there's other ways to enhance your office that give you similar choices to these. Here is a second option you have for your office enhancements. Do you want to do your own lawyering? Well, there's no adjustments there. And on up, you can hire a basic lawyer for 1 times the enhancement cost of the office, or a savvy lawyer, which would be 4 times. And based on that, the lawyers are used to tie up your competitors, basically making them less likely to bid on contracts that are available. So if you want to have a more clear field to get contracts tying your competitors up in knots, well, get yourself a good lawyer for your office. Then there are a number of ways you can enhance the compound that you have in country. So here's an example of choices you have for the type of air conditioning you have in the country. I was not kidding earlier. On the left, if you have no air conditioning, all locations is having hot +4, so that would not be good. Your guys would be wasting a lot of actions, up to one per turn, just because they're overheated, and the one in the middle is no effect. Doesn't make any changes. Unlike for the offices where you start, the basic one is at the bottom of the heap. This one, the one in the middle, is kind of the default, where it's making no adjustments and having no cost. You can pick no air conditioning and reduce the cost. That's why it's -1 times enhancement, but you're going to have the detriment. If you pick blasting air conditioning, it is going to have an increased cost of your overhead, but it's going to give you the benefit. Honestly, for when I start a game, I generally do the blasting air conditioning because it's really annoying to have your guys huffing and puffing because they're overheated during a mission. Other than that, I wait for things like the infirmary quality and armorers and things of that nature. But as ironic as it seems, to me, I think the air conditioning may be the most important one. Your mileage may vary. You get to make your own choices. Another possible enhancement to your company after you've established the size of office and the size of compound and done any upgrades and or downgrades to them is to pick the licenses you want your company to operate under. For example, all corporations begin with the Federal Firearms License. This is the most basic license. It's free. You see in the upper right, it's $0. This license is required. You may not purchase weapon cards that can perform a burst auto explosion or range penetration 2+ attacks. What that means is you're picking basic guns that can roll one and only one die that do not have penetration of 2 or more. All you're going to be doing is a semi-automatic weapon. That's what you get to start with, and that's all you get to start up with unless you pay. And here are the other 4 options. So starting from the upper right, explosives. So many people like to go with a bushel basket of hand grenades. Well, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do this because you're not going to start with an explosives license. The license allows you to do things like carry hand grenades, and I think some of the other ground-based weapons that have 0 range. Okay, explosive weapons. But that's $100,000. If you are a sole proprietorship, you only start the game with $150,000. So, given all the other things you need to pay for, you absolutely don't have the money for this. Now, the game does provide a sort of a backdoor. You can go for some weapons, and hand grenades being the main one, onto the black market and purchase hand grenades off the black market. Great. Only problem is that they cost 3 times as much. They cost $3,000 each instead of $1,000, which is livable, but you also have to roll a die. And if it's a 10% chance of you being discovered, you don't get the hand grenade, but you do get a $25,000 fine. Remembering that you're starting with $150,000, that would be bad. Other types of things, having automatic weapons, burst fire weapons, ranged attack weapons for explosives. So each one has their own capabilities they add at a price. From a realistic point of view, maybe the next one up would be this one, the $50,000 license that allows you to use burst and auto attacks on your small arms. And of course, that's useful. It's kind of hard to imagine playing the game without that capability, but actually you'd be surprised how far you can get and how well you can do with it. Only rolling one big die instead of whatever it is your burst capability is, as an example. All right, so that is the contracts that you can get for limiting or allowing your company to carry, limiting the weapons you can carry or allowing you to carry better ones. Once you have finally got your office set up and all the extra doodahs that you want to have in your office, you get to actually and finally start hiring your mercenaries to play the game with. And unlike Warfighter, this game is more like their leader games for their air series, such as Hornet Leader or IAF Leader. It's like that. Each soldier actually has six incarnations because each one shows that soldier at a different proficiency level. So let's take a look. This little stack here is all the same guy. And which one you're actually playing with depends on the level he has. Meet Comrade Stalin. Again, this stack is all one soldier, and you can see him at his most basic level at level 1. The numbers on the card are pretty much exactly like they would appear on a standard Warfighter card. I don't need to go into too much detail with that. I can see he takes 2 actions. He shoots at 0 only. So he's a really short-range guy. He has a little bit of equipment, light Kevlar, but he has something new here. Warfighter PMC has detriment cards. They have skill cards that are actually a detriment. So here we see he's got a Panic Type 3 card, which is the nastiest of the bunch. It generally is going to make him suppress if scary things are happening around him. And the last one threw me for a loop for probably about 20 minutes trying to figure out what BE meant. I looked through the rule book. I couldn't find any reference to BE. I looked through the card keywords. There was no mention of it in there. And then it finally hit me between the eyes. That's not BE hit. That's B hit. So that means when somebody's shooting at him, he has a 3-point modifier against him, making it more likely that he gets shot. So that's what B hit is. So hopefully you guys won't waste 20 minutes trying to figure out what that is if you watch this video. On the upper right hand, that, as in the main Warfighter series, is the cost of the guy. But in this case, it's a little different because that's the number in thousands for his salary. So this guy costs you, at level 1, costs you 1,000 per month. 1,000 per month. And the bracketed 2 underneath tells you how many hero points he needs, and those are earned during missions, to promote to the next level. So let's take a look at him at level 2. Meet Comrade Stalin at level 2. As you can see, he gets a little bit better. His panic rating is down to 2, whereas it used to be a 3. He's still a range 0 guy only, but he has 1 more health. He has 3 health instead of 2. He still has 2 actions. His movement is still 2, and his cover is still 1. So not a small increase in capability, but nothing too big, okay? But you see he now costs 3,000 for payroll in the upper right-hand corner. And it takes him to get to 4 hero points to get to the next level. Okay, that's fine. That would be 4 new hero points that are after the 2 you earned to get him here. Now, but you also see something new that you didn't see before, Rep 2 Plus or Raise. Well, what does that mean? That means as if once he promotes, your company's reputation has to be 2 points or more, or you have to give him a raise. What does that mean? Well, he was being paid $1,000 a month on his level 1 card. Well, if you have you have 2 reputation points or more with your company, his salary stays at $1,000 even after he promotes. He only gets the raise to $3,000 if your company's reputation at any point falls below 2. So you can, as long as you keep upping your reputation, you can keep upping the level of your mercenaries. And you stingy bastard, you do not have to give him the raise as long as your company reputation is high enough. All right, let's take a look at him at level 3 just for fun. Here is Comrade Stalin at level 3. Notice that his first 2 cards, he was a squaddie. He was a squad soldier. In PMC, the first 2 cards, level 1 and 2, are always squad soldier representations of the soldier. Levels 3 and 4 are always non-player representations of the soldier. And levels 4 and 5 are always player representations of the soldier, meaning he gets a full deck of cards when he's on the table. Each mission is required to have at least 1 player soldier. So you need player soldiers. You can just hire them, or you can grow them. And the reality is, since you got to have something to begin with, you're going to hire some and you're going to grow some. So here he is at level 3. We see that panic is down to a 1 point panic. It's getting better. Each one has a different. Each one of these panics is a skill card that he gets tagged with. You see he now has a full slate of weapons. He's got a shotgun. He's got Kevlar. Now remember the licenses. When you promote guys, they have to fall within, the weapon they use has to fall within the limitations of your licensing. So if you ever have a soldier promote up and then he doesn't fit your restrictions you're operating under, you have to let him go. He cannot participate in any missions more until you upgrade your licensing. But as long as you know that, you can plan for it. So here he is. He's got his weapons. He's getting stronger. His movement went up from 2 to 3. You see the salary now would be 7,000 in the upper right-hand corner. It takes only 2 more hero points to get him to the next level. But your company reputation now has to be 5 or more, or you have to give him the raise all the way up to 7,000 a month. So if, depending on what he was for before, it was either 1,000 or 3,000. If you don't have 5 points, he's now 7,000. Let's keep going. This is fun. Here he is at level 4. Salary is 9,000. You have to have a reputation of 6 or more to avoid giving him a raise. He's still a non-player soldier. Here he is at level 5, and you see now he would cost 12,000 a month to keep him. It takes 6 hero points to promote him, and it takes a company reputation of 9 or more to avoid giving him this raise. Now, when you first start the game and you're hiring your soldiers, you have no reputation, and so anybody you hire above level 1, you're going to have to be paying them the salary because you don't have the reputation to avoid it. And you will need to have at least 1 player soldier, so you will be paying some salary. You're not going to have everybody being 1,000. And one strategy is to hire a player soldier for each team you want to have, for each contract you want to pursue simultaneously, as well as everybody else at level 1, and just let them promote up and try to avoid payroll. Or you hire good guys and have fewer guys, or you do something in between. That's kind of the fun that I'll be honest, I have not fully explored yet as far as what's the best strategy. I don't know. I'm cheap. I hire a bunch of cheap guys and 1 guy to lead them and see what happens. I kind of like that part. But here he is looking like a player soldier. He's got his health. That's the number of cards he gets, as well as what it takes to kill him. He's got his loadout limitations, hand-to-hand rating, all of that. He still has that B hit +1. But aside from that, he's looking pretty good. Let's see him at his fully developed level. And here's Comrade Stalin fully developed with all his gear, his close combat skill card. He's got 6 health, 12 loadout, hand-to-hand +1, all good. 18,000 a month unless you promoted him up and managed to have enough reputation. Requires 12 company reputation to avoid paying him the 18,000 as he promotes up to this level. All right, all the soldiers are like this, so they all have 6 different levels of incarnation. You get lots of soldier cards in this game. So especially if you get the add-ons, they can, every single one of them adds more soldiers. So you have a lot you can do. It's not only who you pick, but what level you want to hire them at. So when you are forming your company, you're picking your soldiers that you want. Remember, you're limited. Your compound limits how many you can have. So the more expensive compound you have, the more soldiers you can hire. Maybe you want to expand the compound right away and then hire a whole bunch of little guys, or level 1 guys, and see who promotes, and maybe 1 guy to lead them, maybe 2. It's entirely up to you. The last setup thing you need to do before you actually start your campaign is to select your competition. Each game begins with you picking 2 competitors that, if barring anything else happening, will go ahead and be with you for the whole 6 months. So there's a deck of competitors. Here's an example of one. Okay, this one was Memveem Inc. You see a bidding value of 4+, and what that means is that when a contract is up for bid, he will be in on the bid on a roll of 4+ on a 10-sided die. When he's in on a bid, that means that the contract bidding continues to a new round. It degrades the value of the contract by about 10%. And eventually M-Beam will drop out. Each roll subsequent to the first one, except for I think one competitor, there will be a +1 to his roll, so it becomes more and more likely that he will bow out of the bidding as time goes on, as each bidding round happens. So let's say in this particular case, if M-Beam drops out of the bidding during the first round, add 20 RPs to the RP value of mission hostiles. RPs are basically bad guy points. Bad guy points. We can get into that in a little bit, but for now, in this particular competitor, if he drops out in the first one, if he rolls below a 4, then there will be a penalty attached to the contract. So that's this guy. I can show you another one just for fun. So if you had two competitors, that would be Halibut Management. And let's say, so they're bidding at 8+, so they're much less likely to actually be in the bidding. They're only in if they roll an 8+ on a 10-sided die. But if Halibut drops out of the bidding during the first round, add 20 RP. Okay, here's another one. So you could have two of these guys making the missions tougher, depending on what they roll in the bidding round. Okay, and there's a deck full of these guys. We don't need to go through them all. All right, so we've got the game is set up. Let's review the monthly sequence. At the beginning of each month, there's some steps you need to take for setting up for the next month. Now, since in terms of the first turn, the first month of the campaign, we've already done pretty much all of this stuff in just setting up the company and hiring employees. But each month you get a chance to make some changes. So, for example, hiring new personnel. Let's say a guy gets killed and you want to get rid of him. Let's say a guy promotes and you don't have the reputation to keep his salary down. You can get rid of him and bring in a new one. In this campaign, having a contractor killed is not as bad as it is in the base game, because in the base game, guys carry through from one play to the next, and you don't really get new ones. Here it's just a matter of a guy dies during a given month, the beginning of the next month, you pick a different guy. You've cleared off some payroll, so you can afford them. It's kind of like that. You have no strong attachment in the sense of penalties for losing a certain guy. But you can, so for example, if you lose a guy who's level 5, you just bring in another level 5. You bring in a guy, you take his level 5 card, you pay the 15,000 or whatever it is he's going to cost, and you continue the campaign. So in that sense, this campaign is pretty robust in the sense that if you lose a guy, it's not the end of the world. Next month you'll bring in a new guy. It's the nature of the mercenary world, I guess. All right, so but most months, like I say, we've already done personnel. You'd have a chance to swap around personnel. You can upgrade your office and compound. You can go to a bigger office. You can put more different enhancements on what you already have. So those things are not locked in. You can, month by month, if you get more resources, if you got a bigger bankroll, you can go ahead and upgrade things. New purchases, that would be, let's say you want a better gun, or you want to upgrade a federal license to have an additional federal license so you can select more different kind of weapons that you used to be able to collect. So this is where you would do it. And then here overhead, that's where you pay the bills. You have money tokens and you simply pay them. It's the sum of all the salaries, all of the one-time purchases, all of the office overhead, everything gets deducted out of your bank account balance. Remember, the objective to winning this game is to have as high a bank account balance as possible. So every purchase you make, if you're thinking like a business guy, you need to say, what's the return on this going to be? And if the return isn't there, even though it might make your team stronger, maybe it's not worth spending, say, $100,000 on an explosive license. That's a big chunk, especially if you're a sole contractor and you have a limited number of teams. All right. Bid on contracts. We talked about that. Let me show you what a contract looks like. This is the contract deck. So every month Let's say, barring marketing upgrades, you pick three. You pick three. One, two, three. Now, these are the contracts that are up for bid for that month. Now, you may notice, for example, this middle one, it's an 8-week contract. So this will span over into the following game month. So if you get this guy, say, on the first month of your campaign, you'll only be bidding on one contract the next month. If you get a 4-weeker and an 8-weeker, that means 4 weeks in, 1 month in, you'll still have an active contract. This guy will still be active for another month, and you'll be looking to replace this one once it expires. Each contract has a certain amount of money that it's worth when you complete it. The minus is that when bidding happens, for every round the bidding continues, you subtract this off the value of the contract. So 10% of the value goes away per round. Now, green is good. So everything red is bad on the card. Everything green is good. If your reputation is 8 or more, one of your competitors is not going to be in the bidding. I assume you randomly pick the guy that's not in. So when your competition is bowing out just because you have such a high reputation. This particular one goes 4 weeks. It's an embassy mission. Embassies have their own location cards as opposed to the streets of Baghdad where this is taking place. That is where this whole campaign is taking place, city of Baghdad. But the embassy missions are all separate deals. The threat level, okay, so this is the number you need to roll or more, excuse me. This is the number you need to roll or less to have a mission happen in a given week. So let's say this is one of your contracts that you have. If you roll a 7 or less, then you have a mission that week. If you roll a 8 or more on this particular contract, you will not have a mission from this this contract. What will happen is that you're going to put a marker on there that makes the next month tougher. And it also increases the rewards. So every month that the contract does not, or every week the contract does not generate an encounter, that means if an encounter comes before the contract expires, it's going to have more negatives and more positives attached to it. Let's see, what else do we got? Success, okay, here's additional things if you succeed, remove any one competitor from the campaign. Good. So this is a way, if you start the campaign with 2, and you will, this is a way to permanently get rid of a competitor. Nice. Failure, lose one off of reputation. Okay. One important thing to note with the contract cards is that the mission entry here will determine which set of objective cards you use when you're actually fighting. So you have a deck of objectives, but say only maybe 6 or 8 of them say embassy. Well, when this is the contract that's in place, you're only going to pick from the embassy missions. When this is your contract, you're only going to pick from the military base missions and so forth. So in that way, the actual encounters and missions that happen during the course of a contract will be thematically attached to the contract that you are currently working on. Should you fail to complete any mission during the campaign, or excuse me, during the term of the contract is automatically failed. The contract goes back on the underside of the deck. You do not get the money for completing the contract. You do get the failure penalty. But whenever you're actually running an encounter, you get the engaged reward. So for example, no matter if you win or lose, you are going to get the 20K bonus just because you fought a mission. Should you complete the contract and be successful during the 4-week term of this contract with every encounter that's been generated, you get the completion award in addition. So you're going to get the engagements per mission that you do. And if depending on how you roll, in 4 weeks, there could be up to 4 of them. More likely there'll be something less, but you know, it depends on how the dice roll. And if you complete successfully, you are going to get the completion funds minus the penalties for the number of rounds of bidding that the contract went through to simulate the value of the contract being bid down by competitors. Okay, so let's say you've gone ahead and done that. You've gone ahead and based on your competitors. Let's say one is going to be in on an 8 or more, and the other's going to be on a 4 or more, and the first guy rolls a 3, and the second guy rolls a 1. Well, that means they didn't stick around for a second bid. Soon as there are no competitors left, that's your contract. And that's how you do it. All right, next. All right, we've looked at bidding on contracts. The next thing, each week, these are things that happen each week. Remember, there's 4 weeks in the month. We've done the monthly things. Now we're doing weekly things. For week 1, let's say, allocate teams. You've got all your mercenaries. If you have at least 2 leaders and say we have 2 leaders, 2 player character leaders that are eligible to have their own card decks, level 5 and level 6 guys, right? And you have 2 contracts, then you can go ahead and split your team up into 2 teams, an alpha team and a beta team. Assign them to each one team to each of the 2 contracts, and then you're going to roll for engagements. And remember, on the card there was a number on the for. Is there going to be an engagement? If there is an engagement, so here's the threat level. Okay, so there's an engagement here on 2 or less. If there is no engagement on this card, then there was no engagement week 1 on this contract. And then you put a modifier counter on the card to make it tougher for the next week. If there is one, then you fight it. You have a mission. Each mission, there's the engagement bonus I mentioned. You get money just for doing the mission. You assign your teams. In this game, you get to take some of your team and assign them to Overwatch. And there's certain beneficial counters that they get. It's basically a one-shot benefit during the course of the encounter. So not all of your guys that are assigned to a mission need to be on the board playing Warfighter as you're used to playing it. Some of them can be on Overwatch and do things like give you 3 extra cards, or change the number of turns by 1 to complete the mission. Things like that, all beneficial. These guys don't get any experience for doing this, but they can be helpful. So an example, let's say you're trapped and you need to escape from a card and work your way back to the card 1 to be free. Well, maybe you don't want to, for a mission like that where you're trying to run away from a horde of bad guys, maybe you don't want slow soldiers. If you've got guys with like one movement rating, where you're going to have to be feeding cards to them day and night to get them to move from one location card to the next, maybe those are good guys to put on Overwatch so that you don't have to actually do that for them. So I think strategies will be clear once you are actually playing the game. Resolve the mission. This is play Warfighter. Everything. Remember, this is the chocolatey outside of the Oreo. The mission is the creamy white inside. You're playing Warfighter very close to what you're used to playing. There are a couple differences. I may touch on those in a minute. Hero points, if you succeed, you get hero points. You assign them to your soldiers, and those are what let you level up. So if a soldier takes 2 points to level up and you assign 2 points, he levels up. Remember, his salary might go up if you don't have the reputation yet. But if you do, he can level up and you don't have to increase his salary. So that's how that works. Advance the week. So we have, where is that? We have contract weeks. So we advance the week counter. So we can be in month 1, week 1. We advance the week, month 1, week 2. Once we get to the end of week 4, then we're starting a new month, and we can do things like change the personnel, upgrade the offices, buy some weapons, pay our monthly overhead. And that's what we do. Let's see, accounts receivable, completed contracts. Here's you take the money for completing contracts. And then the other completed contracts, put them at the bottom of the contracts deck. Paperwork, there may be some things that change your reputation. If you did good, it'll go up. If you did bad, it could go down. Hostile deck upgrade, there are 3 types of hostiles. There's regular old guys, Arabish sort of guys, and there's elite guys, and there's legendary guys. I think for every month you put in 2 elites and 1 legendary into your deck for the following month. So in that way, month by month, the bad guys are getting a little tougher each time. Advance the month and mix and repeat. After the 6-month tour is done, you take a look at what your bank account is, and you look at the table I showed you earlier, and you'll see what your victory level is. There's rules for having multi-tour campaign. That is the only time you can change the corporate form. If you wanted to go for, maybe you could start as a proprietor for your first 6 months, and then if you want to continue that, you could upgrade to, I think it's an LLC would be the next one, and so on and so forth, month by month. So you could chain these 6-month tours together. That would be a lot of gaming, guys, a lot of gaming. So if you're doing that, you really like Warfighter. Okay. The game comes with enough weapons and pieces of equipment and so forth that generally allow you to equip your forces the way you want. As far as equipment goes, even going back to the regular Warfighter game, all you need is a card for reference. Everybody can. There's no limitation. There's no card limitation on the equipment you can buy. You simply have one card representative, and other guys can buy it, and you put a note on them or a marker on them that they have that piece of equipment. Even if you don't have enough cards, it's okay. As far as how the missions themselves go, I'm not going to go into that because it's basically Warfighter. I will say one thing that they did that I hadn't seen before is they put in 2 types of cards instead of just one. The one to the left is your standard Warfighter, back of the deck card, that's your action card that you're used to seeing, and the one to the right is different. So what's different about it? Well, the one to the left is kind of one of your normal cards. This one you've probably seen before. It's a reload card. Works exactly like a reload card in the rest of Warfighter that you're used to seeing. So we don't need to talk any more about that. The red card is a card that you must play, and it's a detriment. It's a detriment. It does something bad to one of your soldiers. It could be your player soldier. In this case, it's a random PMC squad soldier or random PMC non-player soldier, or 2 XP. So it's going to affect not your player soldier, but one of your other guys. Or you can spend 2 experience points to make it go away. And the effect of the card is that soldier gains 1 extra that soldier must waste an action before moving. All right. So that means he's got to throw away his first action, basically, or throw away an action before he gets to move. However, once he does that, the following turn, he gets 1 extra action coming back. So I'm not quite sure of the logic of that, it kind of carries over that way, but that's the way it works. You have a short-term penalty, and the following turn, in this case, you get it back. You might lose an action throwing it away prior to a move, and the next turn you kind of get it back again. But it can mess up your short-term plans, especially if you get enough of these. Because one of the strategies I've seen is guys optimize their hands. If they got enough turns, this game is turn limited once you're in a mission. But if you're doing well and you have extra turns, guys, go ahead and dump and draw, optimizing the hand that they have. But now that you've got these guys in the deck, they could be doing things to mess you up if you do multiple dumps and draws, because just for infinitesimally fine-tuning your hand, say, it's easy for me to say, that you may not want to do that, because you'll be picking up these guys that are going to be assigned to your soldiers and may mess you up. So even though you're making some small improvement to your hand, you're messing up a soldier, and, well, that's not what you want to do. All right, so what I'd like to do to wrap this up, I've showed you all of the stuff that I think you need to see, is just talk about the rule set and just general opinions. Now, the package comes with, and I do like this very much, it is a listing of keywords from the cards. So in theory, all the things you need to know as far as what's on the card is contained in this book. So it's a fast way to figuring things out without going into the rule book. Okay, that's good. However, remember, BE hit is not in this book. It wasn't there. I had to scratch my head for 20 minutes to figure out what BE hit was. There was B hit. I honestly, guys, I didn't see that in the rule book. I didn't see that in that chart. Maybe it's just me. Okay. The other thing they did is they're pretty much saying, okay, we're going to make this a common system. On the left, you have, say, a fantasy warfighter. Well, that doesn't exist yet, all right, but presumably it's coming. The second one over is World War II. That does exist. Number three is modern. That's just kind of what we're looking at. And the last one is near future. So it's space stuff. So the intent is to combine all these different kind of warfighter games into a common game with a common set of rules that are shared across all these platforms. Uh, Now, I really liked the rule book to this game when it first came out, and I am less certain about this approach, to be honest, guys, because this thing is, where is it? 80 pages. 80 pages. That's kind of turning into a pretty thick rule book. And some of the things in here, if you look, Shadow War, that's the companion game that came out with the Merc game. That has to do with stealth, and here's rules attendant to that. That game also has a rule book exactly like this one in it. Let's see, medal cards. I mean, if you have to have the deck of medals to do the medal cards. So, depending on what card expansion decks you got, you may or may not be able to use this section of the rules. Vehicles. The PMC does have kind of the black limo cards that have machine guns mounted. So there actually is a vehicle in this game. And here's all the rules for PMC. Okay, so instead of having a set of base rules and then game-specific rules that layer on top, it looks like the intent is to just put them all in this one book for all of the 4 games. And boy, I don't know. I think it's already 80 pages. We don't have space rules in here yet. We don't have fantasy rules in here yet. If there's anything specific about those games, this I assume is going to get even thicker. The other thing I'm not sure about that approach, or at least the way it was executed. I see 80 pages here, but guess what, guys? Here, page 81. What isn't there? I don't see an index in the back. How on God's green earth can you put together a rule book of 81 pages? And even with this, I don't know how you do it without having an index in back. It's just not good. Not good. It's just too thick a rule book not to have an index in the back. So with that, and I guess one other thing they did is that it's like, for example, they've expanded hand-to-hand combat rules. The rules in the original Warfighter were so simple. It's like if you're hitting a guy with your hands, you have to roll a 0. That's it. That's the rule. Knives, I think it would make like a 9 or a 0, something like that. It makes it a little better, not much better. They've made the hand-to-hand rules more complicated. And if you look at the designer notes and stuff, I think it has to do with the next one out of the gate here is going to be the fantasy game. And of course, there's going to be, unlike in modern and even World War II, there's going to be a lot of hand-to-hand in any fantasy game. That's the nature of sword fighting. So because they're doing that, they have to take what was a very simple and honestly appropriate rule for modern, because it's very rarely going to happen. And when it does happen, just rolling a die for a 0 is plenty good enough for that one oddball time you're going to be using your fists to knock out a guy in modern warfighter. Rather than muck up the rules for the entire system, it would seem more to me to keep the modern rules simple, and then have a rule specific book for the fantasy game where these more involved rules are only there for that particular game. They say in the notes for that hey, you can take a World War II soldier and have him fight in the near future, or you can take a guy with a ray gun from the near future set and have him fight in a fantasy world. I mean, to me, that kind of destroys the theme more than enhances it. For me, it's just kind of silly. And even if I had every single thing that they came out with, I don't think I would ever do that. Because it just doesn't work for me. And then having the design philosophy around the rule books, designing the rule books to support that, I think it more gets in the way than it helps. So, personal opinion, the rules are very readable. You can find them, don't I? But I'm trying to give you an idea of if they were to take a different approach, where I would prefer them to see that take that different approach. So organizing the rules and being less worried about being able to take your guy with the broadsword and put him into a modern gunfight. I don't think you need to worry about that. Okay, so that's just me, just me. All right, I think I've given you a flavor. There's many videos out there, I'm sure, that will talk to you about how the missions happen. The one thing I would say is that there is a nice section of this rule book that goes into different mission types. So the missions you're used to in regular warfighter, where you're fighting card by card from slot 0 to slot whatever it is, however long the mission is, 7 or 10 or something, is those missions are going to be probably no more than half of the missions you do. There are other missions that are going to happen that work differently, and a lot of great variety to what you're doing, that I think you guys are really going to like. And so my overall assessment of the game, I love the game. I love the game. I love the idea of the mercenaries. I love the idea. I'm a business guy. I have my own business the last 15 years, so this whole business about overhead and all that kind of stuff. Oh man, I love that. So Warfighter is one of my go-to games. DVG Games is one of my go-to companies. Just as an aside, I play their games. I buy games from lots of different companies, and I would say some of them, they look so cool, but they kind of end up on the shelf and for whatever reason not played. DVG games get played. They get played and they get enjoyed. This is, in my mind, one of the top ones, in my view. I like Thunderbolt Apache. Okay, that's kind of up there too. I love their Air Leader series. Particularly the Vietnam one, the Phantom Leader, I am partial to, but Warfighter is special. Even if all you do is get the basic Warfighter package and have fun with it, I think you'll like it. If you want to spend more coin, you can get this one. You do not need the regular Warfighter to play this, by the way. If you have just this package, the Warfighter Private Military Contractor package, and then maybe I would suggest if that's all you got, picking up some or all of the 3 add-on decks that go along with it. I think you're going to have yourself a really good time. So, with all of that rolled together, the good, the bad, the in-between, and whatever, I hope this helps you understand a little bit of what Warfighter adds to the basic game. And so with that, this is Paul, the Oaken Knight, wishing you all, well, I hope you had a Merry Christmas. I hope you have a Happy New Year coming, and I'll be back again with you next year. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.